Yo, 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 welcome back to another video. Let me just put this on the charger. Let me see if my iPad need more. Yeah, it needs it more. It's okay. I got 40, 43. I forgot to charge it last night, but it's not too bad. Anyway, this is exhort part 4. It's gonna be the last video we do for a while. So I hope y'all enjoy this. Let me just do this last one and we can get straight into the video. Okay, here we go. This is a look back at the Ultimate Spider-Man 2012. This video was
The
12
Spectacular
minutes.
Spider-Man is arguably, if not the definitive best Spider-Man TV show. The reason that
Yeah,
this show is
I'd
beloved
say
by so
so.
many fans in the Spider-Man community is due to the character development that each character gets. In the show's short 2 seasons, we see the Sinister Six form, along with Eddie Brock turn into Venom and Peter getting the symbiote suit, and a new take on the Green Goblin, which portrays Peter's best friend, Harry Osborn, as the Green Goblin. There's nothing I can really say to give enough praise to the Spectacular Spider-Man show that hasn't already been said a million different times on the internet.
That's true.
Now, if this
That's
show
true.
is obviously so beloved by many fans, what happened? Why was there only 2 seasons? Well, after Disney and Marvel acquired some of the rights to Spider Man from Sony, all the existing Spider Man projects that were happening just dropped. And that included the Amazing Spider Man movies and, of course, the Spectacular Spider Man TV show. Since Disney then wanted to start making their own Spider Man TV shows, that meant that Sony would have to pay Disney and Marvel each time one of their property was used in a production. This was a huge legal mess, as you could imagine, and it resulted in the Spectacular Spider Man being cancelled. After the cancellation, in September of 2012, Disney released the first episode to their new Spider Man show titled The Ultimate Spider Man. Now, I am probably one of the only few Spider Man fans that will give this show praise. In full transparency, I know that I am wholeheartedly blinded by nostalgia when it comes to this show. And that's because when I watched this show, I was the peak prime audience for this show. I was in middle school and my 11-year-old brain couldn't process what good or bad media was. All I knew at the time is when I saw Spider-Man, I got so excited. So this show really came out at the perfect time for me, and what I'm going to be doing in this video is just discussing one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man shows, The Ultimate Spider-Man. I know that this show has some problems, and a lot of them, but before I explain to you why I love this show so much, let's just go ahead and get into the problems that I actually have with this show. But if you wanted to watch a multiple hour-long video essay going through every single flaw in this show, pointing out every little detail, this really isn't the video for you. Instead, I'm going to touch upon the 3 main flaws and criticisms I have mainly seen when talking about The Ultimate Spider-Man. By far, the biggest and most annoying issue I have with this show is how kiddish it treats its audience and the jokes that they make. A vast majority of the jokes in this show, and at least the first few seasons, are essentially just family-friendly, cutaway Family Guy gags. This is by far the biggest gripe I've seen online with the whole series, but Peter constantly breaks the fourth wall as if he was Deadpool, but it's not really done in a comedic or funny way, more just in a cringe way, and there's really no reason that Peter Parker needs to be doing this. I think that the reason that he does this is, you know how in Spider-Man comics when Peter is constantly talking to himself and there's those thought bubbles above his head? Well, those are used so that the reader can tell what Peter Parker is thinking instead of having Peter express his thoughts directly to another character. When this is used correctly, the reader builds up a personal relationship with Peter as if he's speaking directly to the viewer. And this is one of the reasons why Peter Parker and Spider-Man are so popular as a character. In many other shows, when Peter is by himself, he's constantly talking to himself and doing a dumb exposition dump, or he's just conveying his feelings to the audience. And this is not a crazy or absurd thing to do, especially in an animated TV show format. Well, what does the Ultimate Spider-Man do instead? Well, Peter is constantly doing freeze frames and breaking the fourth wall, looking directly at the camera and talking to his audience. This is essentially how freaking Dora does whenever she needs directions from her map. She looks directly at the camera and just asks a question and then waits. If this doesn't sound absolutely ridiculous, on top of the 99% of the jokes that are essentially just fourth wall breaks, these are all done in a very millennial, LOL, zany type style joke. It is beyond cringe and cliche, and is extremely forced. There will be extremely serious situations in this show, and then Peter will just freeze frame and make the most cringe joke with his stupid Bitmoji angel and devils on his shoulders. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about the stupid angel and devils that keep showing up on Peter's shoulders, and for some reason they are a reoccurrence throughout the whole show. Even towards the end of the show in the later seasons, it takes a more serious and mature tone, but for some reason they still have to have callbacks to the stupid zany millennial jokes, so they have Peter continue to break the fourth wall and tell these cringy jokes just to find a little place to put them in. I mean, I admit it gets much more tolerable in the last 2 seasons, but sadly it is still around. But I'm getting sidetracked. The second main problem I have with this show is the absurd amount of characters that Spider-Man is always working with. For the most part, besides the occasional team-up, Spider-Man works solo. At the beginning of the show, Spider-Man is recruited by Nick Fury. Yeah, that's right, Nick Fury, and is told that in order for him to essentially become the ultimate Spider-Man and do a video game level up, he has to become a leader of this superhero team. This team includes the most shallow versions of Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Nova, and White Tiger. There are a few episodes that focus on each of these side superheroes, but having these 4 characters plus Spider-Man be your main characters in your series is very
Luke Cage is
strange to
called
me. I don't know
Power
why
Man.
you would do that in a Spider-Man show. Compare this to the series' predecessor, The Spectacular Spider-Man. It's no wonder why this show wasn't received as well as Disney expected it to be. To me, in the early seasons, it felt like every episode or every other episode was just like a hero of the week team up, and the writers had to find a way to have Spider-Man team up with Captain America or Wolverine or even the freaking Guardians of the Galaxy. Peter Parker, in almost every single other adaptation of the character, is this smart, independent nerd who just works by himself and creates his own gadgets and tech, and then usually from an encounter with a villain that he ends up losing, he learns from those mistakes and builds his own tech. For example, let's say Peter fights Electro for the first time, and he gets shocked a lot, right? And then he loses. His big takeaway from that will be that his suit needs to become insulated, that way Electro's electricity won't affect him as much as it did. Then, in his next encounter with Electro, he will be much more prepared and he'll know how to defeat him based on what he did wrong in the first encounter. Well, in this show, Peter gets recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. and is constantly getting these tech upgrades by S.H.I.E.L.D. The formula of Peter failing and then learning from his mistakes and eventually overcoming the villain seems to ultimately be thrown out to make Peter this more immature and ignorant version of what Peter Parker normally is. And this really leads me to the third problem I have with this show. Peter Parker's reliance on tech in this show, and especially tech from S.H.I.E.L.D., is definitely the most annoying part from his character perspective. The fourth wall breaking and millennial zany jokes are definitely migraine inducing, but having Peter be this bumbling fool who is always looking to S.H.I.E.L.D. as his daddy to come save him from problems is the worst thing. Peter is constantly getting these tech upgrades from S.H.I.E.L.D. and he never knows how to use them. Instead of Peter building his tech on a basis of when he needs to and then figuring out how to use it, kind of like a skill tree in a video game, in this show, Peter Parker is just randomly given things like a spider cycle, even though he swings on those webs. He doesn't need a spider cycle. Or he's given things like an Iron Spider suit. It gets to the point with the Iron Spider suit that even one of his friends realizes how incompetent he is with the suit, and he just straight up steals it from Peter. And no, he never gives it back. It's laughable. What makes Peter Parker's Spider-Man different from all the other Spider-Man, in my opinion, is how smart he is and the use of his own tech that he himself builds. This is what I think makes him stand out from the other Spider-Man like Miles, but when Peter doesn't know how to use his own tech, he just makes him a laughable joke of a character. Now, there's a lot more problems that I have with this show, but I'm not here to rip into every single flaw that this show has. I actually really like this show. So again, if you want to watch a multiple hour-long video essay ripping into the show, this isn't the video for you. You can just leave. That being said, let's get into what I love about this show, and we're going to start with the Webbed Warriors. Now, I know I literally just said I don't like it when Spider-Man works with the team, but this is literally the one exception. Season 3 is titled The Webbed Warriors, and it focuses around Peter Parker, Flash Thompson, who is Agent Venom, Ben Reilly as the Scarlet Spider, and Amadeus Cho as the Iron Spider. That was his friend from earlier. Oh, and there's also Miles Morales, who for some reason is called Kid Arachnid in this show. In my opinion, Season 3 is where this show hits its peak. Season 4 is very good as well, but Season 3 is just so amazing. Season 3 follows Peter as he joins the Avengers, and then some nonsense happens with Loki and a Venom symbiote. It's a whole different arc. And then Flash Thompson ends up bonding with the symbiote and becomes Agent Venom. That's like the best part of that arc. But Season 3 follows that, and then following those events, Amadeus Cho finds a way to get a hold of the Iron Spider suit from Peter after his incompetence with the suit. And then the three of them take on the Goblin and some of his goons. After the battle with the Green Goblin takes place, the Siege Perilous, which is this like MacGuffin crystal device that allows the user to travel to different universes and stuff, Goblin then takes the Siege Perilous and portals to a different dimension where he's trying to get all different spider people's blood throughout the multiverse. Our three heroes then jump in the portal after Goblin, and we go on this multiverse story with them. In the next 4 episodes, our heroes meet Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Girl, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, Spider-Knight, and then Miles Morales. By the way, Miles Morales in this show is voiced by Donald Glover, and it's just perfect. Throughout these 4 episodes, each time we visit a new universe, the art style and animation
crazy.
style changes, and it's just so beautiful. I'm going to put some examples up on the screen right now. This arc is by far my favorite arc in the whole series, and if you haven't even watched the show or don't want to, I just highly recommend that you watch these 4 episodes in Season 3, and then if you want to go back to the rest of the show, you can, but at least just watch these 4 episodes, because it's honestly insane, and the whole storyline is very condensed to this just one arc. Season 3 covers the Spider-Verse, the Guardians of the Galaxy, both a Christmas and Halloween episode with Moon Knight, along with a whole nother Part 4 storyline dealing with the Contest of Champions. It's just so good. I love Season 3. Season 3 is everything I love about this show, and it just brings me to the last thing I have to say about this show. If you were to hear that there's a Marvel TV show with Spider-Man, all of his iconic villains, the Avengers, Loki, Guardians of the Galaxy, Cloak and Dagger, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, Squirrel Girl, the Grandmaster, just to name a few, you would probably think this is just like a Marvel show or a show about a Marvel animated universe. But no, this is a freaking Spider-Man show, and it has all of these characters. If you want to argue that this is a Spider-Man show,
and
leave all
Friends.
the other Marvel characters out of it and just stick to the Spidey villains, I agree. I 100% am right there with you. That's the best way to do a Spider-Man show, and I think that's where Spectacular stands out. But at this point, it's extremely obvious that this is not the direction that the showrunners wanted to take with The Ultimate Spider-Man, and if you want to watch a show like that, go watch the 90s animated series as well, or Spectacular. They are both phenomenal. That being said, I got to a certain point when watching the show that I just started to embrace that this is the universe we're in, this is where the story is taking place, and this is a different Spider-Man story. Heck, Peter ends up teaching at the end of the series an X-Men-styled S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy show where Rhino is a student there, and he's now studying to be a hero. This is not the traditional Spider-Man story, but as soon as I started to accept that this is a different take on the character and a whole different universe, the more I started to enjoy this show for what it was, something different. I mean, it's an animated TV show that premiered on Disney XD. It's not going to be peak cinema. Don't get me wrong, content geared towards kids still needs to be good and is not an excuse by any means to be lackluster or lazy. But if you watch this series, by the time you get to Season 3, you can tell this isn't a traditional Spider-Man story and is made for kids, so you might as well just enjoy it. Lastly, one of my overall favorite
I
parts
like
of
how
the show
Iron Man
has
can
to be
just
the
show his
villains.
face.
The villains in
Because
the
he
show
already told the
are
world who he
amazing,
is.
no pun intended. We get a whole season based on Spider-Man fighting the Sinister Six, and throughout the season, the members of the Sinister Six keep changing because Spider-Man keeps defeating them. The decision to make Doc Ock the final antagonist in the show is so cool in my mind. I mean, this design for the character is peak. I don't care what you have to say, this is peak Doc Ock costume and design in my opinion. This show throws so many different villains at you throughout the 4 seasons that the majority of my Spider-Man villain knowledge came from this show when I was a kid. I mean, have you ever heard of the Beetle? Well, I really never did until I watched this show, but the Beetle is this random guy in an Iron Man-like suit shaped like a beetle, and he has no business in this show besides being an unrelenting villain and menace towards Spider-Man. This is a character that I have not seen
Wow,
in any
my
other
boy
forms of
just
media, but the show
adapted.
makes him one of the main antagonists. Well, main side antagonist. This is one of the many examples of different side villains that get depth to their character and is fleshed out to be more
Taskmaster?
than just a one-dimensional bad guy. The fact that the show pulls off so many different obscure comic book villains is just insane. There's a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to the villains in this show, and it is so long it has to be listed alphabetically. Really, the only gripe I have with the villains is how they did Venom a little dirty early on in the show, but he ended up having a twist that Harry is Venom, and honestly, it's so fun. And the fact that they did this a decade before Spider-Man 2 on the PS5, I just have to give points to the show for that. The anti-Venom arc in this show is done so much better than it was in the game anyways. The last thing I'm going to say about the villains in this show is that I really enjoyed Norman Osborn's character in this show. During the show, we watch Norman go from this kind of good guy to a kind of evil Iron Patriot, and then of course he turns into the Green Goblin. His Goblin is so fun to watch because he goes from this traditional guy in a goblin suit to this fully hulkish monster goblin, and I love it. Then when we're in another dimension and we meet Miles, the Goblin in that universe is this full-blown kaiju green goblin
I didn't even know
monster
that
with
was
wings.
Norman Osborn.
That
I
doesn't really
thought that
last
was
long, but the fact that we got to see it was so
a
cool.
different.
And then at the
That
end
was
of
a
Norman's
different
arc, he's
universe
ultimately defeated
Goblin.
and gets the standard comic book amnesia and then forgets who he ever was. Last video I talked about how I'd like to write a script for Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4 and the movies moving forward for him. And I know it's very unrealistic, but I would love to see the MCU Spider-Man fight this type of goblin in one of his upcoming movies. I mean, imagine Tom Holland finds this universe's version of Norman, and he thinks he's going to be the same suit goblin type goblin from No Way Home, and then he just gets attacked out of nowhere from this brooding Hulk-like monster goblin.
But
That'd
didn't
be such a
Goblin
fun
have
take
this
on the
whole
character. All in all, The Ultimate Spider-Man
turn
is
back
definitely a flawed show. There's no denying that. But
good
it's also one of my
type of
favorite
art?
childhood shows to just look at
Well,
and enjoy it for what it is.
not really.
If this show isn't for you, then honestly, I totally understand. But where I was at in life when this show came out, I was at the perfect demographic to enjoy this show. This show has some really good arcs that I think almost any viewer will admit if they sit down and take the time to watch it. Even if you hate watching it, just watch the show and let me know what you think. If you haven't watched this show or are kind of on the fence if you should watch the show or not, I'm going to put a few arcs on screen right now that I highly suggest you watch, and at least watch those, and then you can decide if you want to watch the rest of the show. If you've made it this far into the video listening to me talk about a show that premiered over a decade ago, I truly just want to say thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you think about the show, whether you love it or you hate it or you've never even seen the
62.
show
What does
and you're just
62
watching this
mean?
video for fun. At the end of my last video, I said that my goal for the end of 2023 was to hit 100 subscribers, and we did that. We hit that goal like 3 days after my third video on the channel, and seriously, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart,
Did you say 100
thank
subscribers?
you so much. You guys have no idea how much this means to me.
100,000.
I absolutely love talking about this stuff, as you can tell, and from the feedback and engagement
Oh,
that I
100.
got on my last 2 videos, I think some of you guys enjoy
Okay,
listening to me.
that's what's
I
up.
think that my next video will...
You want to hit 100? You hit 100. I'm trying to hit 1,700. I'm at 11865. We can get to 1870. That'd be cool. Be nice. It's only 5. Just 5 more subscribers. We can do that, right? But anyways, thank y'all for watching. I'm